Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm Blake Oliver.
And I'm David Leary.
And we are joined today by Aaron Harris, CTO at Sage. Aaron, welcome back to the show.
No, thanks for having me. Always good to be here.
Looks like you are at Sage Transform and coming to us right from the event. How's it going?
I am indeed. Yeah, I just finished my keynote about an hour ago. So I am doing great because I got that out of the way. And now it's nothing but fun from here on out.
Oh, that's good. So at the press conference earlier this week, you were talking about AI, but you also put it in context of, at this point, you've been around Sage Intacct for so long, right? It was your baby to begin with. And
Yep.
you'd think you'd be winding down your career, and AI has like rejuvenated you. Like you're more excited than ever. Like you're not going to step out. Can you explain more?
Yeah. I went through a period of time after I really understood the implications of large language models. I went through this period of time of wondering, this is an entirely new era of technology. It is completely different than the way we've built things in the past. And I really did go through this sort of self, introspection. Like, am I still the man for the job? Can I lead the company through this? And a lot of sleepless nights. But when I really dug into it and started to learn, and ironically, the thing I was sort of anxious about was teaching me. So with a lot of help from ChatGPT, it just becomes so exciting. And when you can really get into the works of the way large language models operate and just see the magic, it's just a great time to be a CTO. It's a great time to be in technology, period.
I tell people it's a great time to be alive. It's a great time to be alive, period, because like so much of what I read about in science fiction as a kid is now coming to life. And like you, Aaron, I'm using AI every single day to help me learn how to do new things. David has a great example. David, what was your example? You used AI recently?
I used it just to do one cell in Google Sheet. I had to write a formula in one cell, and it saved 2 people weeks a year from our team.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Just
Wow.
one cell. I had it create for me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And something that we never would have had the capacity to do before. And it's interesting because we're using it every day, but most people aren't. I survey accounting professionals when I do webinars, when I go to events, and my estimate is about 20% of them have tried it. And it's understandable, right? Like it's not in the products we use. You have to go out and sign up and use something new.
Right.
But you're changing that, Aaron. The big announcement at Sage Transform is this new product, Sage CoPilot, which is going to bring generative AI inside of Sage Intacct. Tell us about
That's
that.
right. Yeah, so large language models have this amazing ability to drive, very unstructured conversations. But the real power is that they can take what would be complex to code in the old traditional ways of coding and write the code itself and make some decisions about a sequence of steps I should take to complete some task. And so it just becomes a very different way of interacting with software. But I think more importantly, as the developers of software, it gives us quite a bit more power in how we automate the workflow within the software. So it will, as you would probably expect, be available to answer questions like, what do you project my cash balance to be at the end of the month? But it will also do things like say, hey, since you last logged in, I processed 18 invoices. And can you take a look at this one? Because I'm not sure that I coded it correctly. Or, hey, take a look at this one because the amount's a bit off versus other invoices that we've seen. And so the whole idea is to get accountants out of that routine work of doing and essentially let CoPilot do the work where the accountant is doing the reviewing.
There's a great example in the video on the Sage CoPilot webpage where the accountant, the user, gets a prompt from the AI that says, hey, Melissa hasn't submitted her timesheet yet. Would you like me to remind her? And then the user says yes. And then the AI, CoPilot, drafts the reminder and says, you want me to send this? And then the user says yes, and it's sent.
Yep. Yeah. So we talk a lot. I mean, my whole keynote today was on how do we use technology to eliminate the monthly close. And one of the biggest problems in getting the monthly close done is having to chase people to submit their timesheet, right? Or to approve or review some transaction. And so it sort of sounds like a little thing, but if you can hand that responsibility off to CoPilot, who doesn't just sort of manage the communication, but also knows, what's happening with the close. What are we still waiting on, and who do I need to chase? So that's sort of an overlooked value of this is actually not what it does for the accountant. It's an ability to reach out to people outside the accounting team to where they're a dependency on a workflow and just make it easier for them
Mm.
to do what accounting needs them to do.
I love this example because it's something that's such a pain, chasing people for what you need. Can you give me any other examples of what users who are testing Sage Copilot are using it for? What are they saving time with?
So, I mean, a lot of it is around that communication. So, drafting an email to send to a customer to ask them to pay, or to provide some updated compliance information. One of the use cases that's really picking up is actually accountants collaborating with their clients to get the needed documents and information that they need for an engagement. So, for example, if it's a tax return, having Copilot run that process of gathering the information that's needed from the clients. It's going to vary, across different types of users. An accountant in practice versus a CFO versus a small business owner or a controller. Um, there's obviously tons of enthusiasm around the ability to ask Copilot for an answer without having to run a report. One of the things that I didn't expect, but has turned into a huge fan favorite is, and this is not intact, this is our Sage 50 product. In Sage 50, we've got something like 900 canned reports. There's a report for everything.
Of
And
course.
one of the top support questions that the team that's supporting Sage 50 gets is, what report should I run? And so, this isn't a Copilot thing. We've just used a large language model. We've trained it on all the report definitions. We built a simple interface that essentially allows the user to ask a question, and in response, we
Mm.
run one of those 900 reports. Uh, People love it.
And you could conceivably use it to generate custom reports based on
Absolutely.
a text prompt. I could say in natural
Yeah.
language, I want to see every paycheck by every employee for this date range with these
Yep.
fields broken out in columns. And
Yes.
Gen AI could totally do that, right?
Absolutely, it can do
Huh.
that.
Aaron,
So
can you? Oh, go ahead,
no, go
Blake.
for it, David.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Aaron, can you explain a little bit on the background? Because you mentioned that you trained it, you've kept data secure and siloed out, and then to explain, because it's Copilot. Is this you're built with Microsoft Copilot? I know you guys also have to do stuff with Amazon. Like, just clarify what you built and what the actual
Yep.
offering is.
Yeah. So what we're getting from Microsoft is access to GPT-4 through Azure. And behind that, a lot of support from Microsoft in how we actually interact and get our needs more on the sort of the scale and the performance side of things. So we use GPT-4 as that, what I call the orchestration or the conversation layer. But the way you build something like Copilot is you rely on the large language models at that tier, but then fundamentally what you have to do is build skills for the Copilot to do the things that you envision Copilot doing for your customers. And so we've got a set of models that we've developed for doing cash flow forecasting, for example. And we've got a set of models we've developed we have 27 models just for processing an invoice. And that's where we spend, our time, our research. It's on these very specific accounting related problems. And, the way this works is a customer will ask a question, and Copilot will then break that down into what steps it needs to take to complete whatever question it is, which may include making an API call. That we've created a skill for it to do that. Access some documentation. We've created a skill for that. use a model we've developed to do a forecast, right? And with partners yesterday, I did this crazy thing. I showed them what it's like to debug CoPilot, because it's such a radically different experience for an AI engineer to not step through code, but to actually have a conversation with CoPilot in the process of debugging CoPilot. It's absolutely crazy.
We're working on using AI to help us generate continuing education courses and perform compliance at Earmark. And so I've been experimenting with the ChatGPT platform, the API, the playground, and it's been really interesting experiencing it for myself because, for example, we have these long transcripts of podcast episodes, and we want to do stuff with that. But these transcripts are larger than the context window for ChatGPT 4 Turbo,
right?
Because they're so long. So the question then becomes, and I guess this is like a programming or a coding question, is how do I break down this transcript into steps or to pieces that I can then process to get the result I want, which I can't get because the context window, the amount of text I have is too much.
Right. Well, there's a couple of approaches to that. One is essentially chaining the conversation, through these things.
Yeah.
But this is where retrieval augmented, what's the G stand for in RAG? Retrieval augmented generation comes into play, where essentially instead of feeding the data, into the large language model where it puts it into its vector, data store, instead you're giving the large language model a skill to interrogate and interact with data. And so your prompts can be pretty simple. In this case, you're just asking AI something about the transcript. And then what it's doing is it's actually going out and analyzing the data that you've stored for it.
Right. But you have to do it in this, like you have to really think about how you do it because it costs money to send a lot of data into these APIs, right? So your prompts need to be as streamlined as possible. And that's what you've done with these assistants you've built, right? Is you've trained them, you've tuned them up, you've made them efficient and fast. Yeah. It's fascinating.
It's really fascinating to see the code behind the scenes, because a lot of that is what we call system prompts. So, this is human language in the code instructing CoPilot on a way to behave or some skill that it has. And, there is a process with models like GPT-4 to actually train these as a layer on top of the model. So there are approaches to actually building those system level prompts into the model so that you don't have to incur the costs of the tokens every single time you ask a question.
So speaking of cost, it was mentioned in the press conference that there's going to be a charge for this product because you're going to produce so much value. Is this correct? Did I hear it correctly? And give an example of the value CoPilot could create.
And I was thinking as I play around with it myself, there has to be a charge because I'm seeing my bill rack up. And like some of these, like a typical prompt can cost, 40 cents. So, and I could imagine people using this a lot if it becomes really effective. So
yeah, AI is not cheap. What's guiding us here is actually making sure that in the cases that we support with CoPilot, that there is real value. And a big part of that is identifying, where the pain is today, where, CoPilot can come in and provide an answer. I don't know exactly how we're going to price this. I love what's going on right now with my hands.
This is so strange. We have to call this out because this happened twice now. You gave a thumbs up, and your thumb. There must be some AI going on with the video here because your thumb went up, and it gave a thumbs up on your screen, like on our video for you. And then we just saw like an explosion of fireworks behind you. So there's some AI in between us right now that's adding these like emoji reactions.
I promise that I'm not clicking some buttons to say, give them a thumbs up to the fireworks. It's really hard for somebody who speaks with their hands to know that if I make the wrong gesture, AI is going to add some flowery, exciting animation.
Can you try the thumbs up again? I want to see if this is on your end or like what is happening.
I've never been able to reproduce it.
It's so strange. But I mean, it's a great example of what we're talking about, which is like the video like maybe still images every now and then of this video are being fed into an AI, which is then interpreting your hand gestures
Yep.
and then deciding whether or not to insert some sort of graphic into the feed.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
living
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah, for sure.
I
So,
yeah, I completely forgot where we were going, but maybe you can get
but
us
we were
back on
talking about
track.
pricing.
Pricing, okay.
Yeah, sort of the conventional wisdom right now is that the commercial opportunity with generative AI is in specific applications. It's not in the more general capabilities. It's AI that can do specific tasks in an industry is really where the value is going to come from. We know that we're going to bring a lot of value. We're focused on these cases that where there is pain that we've identified. How we're going to price this, I don't know. There's lots of ways we might do this, but fundamentally, we deeply believe in the value that we're creating. There is cost to it, so there will be some price yet to be
Right.
determined.
I like the way you're approaching it though, which is let's create value first and then figure out how we charge for that value, as opposed
There is
to
an order here.
yeah. And I feel like just to pick on them because everyone's picking on them this week, Google did it the wrong way, which is let's create Gemini and then start charging people even to access it before they've even had a taste of it, right? And then of course everything goes haywire, which is
Yep.
not even really
Yep.
related, but maybe just sort of like points at the dysfunction in there.
Well, I mean, there's a principle in the startup world that you don't have a product that people want to use until you figured out pricing where they
Yeah.
want to pay.
The other thing I like about your approach is you have tuned up specific models for specific use cases where the AI is going to do a good job. So
Yep.
you're like you're going to get a good experience because this is not just let's expose all the data in say intact to
Yeah.
a general language model and then see if
Right.
people get good results. You're actually
That would be
trying
a
to
disaster.
you're trying to ensure a good experience.
Yeah. Large
Yeah.
language models are not good at math. I was
Yeah.
explaining this to somebody the other day. Large language model works off its memory, right? If it's seen a math problem with the answer, it'll be able to give the answer. If it's seen that math problem with a couple of variations on the answer, you might get the answer that isn't the right answer. And so the first principle of preventing AI hallucinations is to not use a large language model for something where there is a deterministic answer, right? Where
Mhm.
where there's better technology. And so, the way that we build this, there's a focus on knowing when the large language model should hand off to the skills that we give it that are in many cases built around traditional programming techniques like SQL and API invocations, where you're going to get right
Mhm.
a consistent answer every single time.
Right. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I caution accountants not to use ChatGPT off the shelf for reconciliations or for converting bank statements into CSV files to import into your accounting system or asking it to do some sort of like mathematical stuff because it's a statistical model, which means that you're going to get a slightly different answer. And when our profession says it needs to be to the penny, you can't risk it not being accurate, right? It has to be the same
Right.
answer every time.
Yep.
But so how do you solve that? So you train the model to like use a calculator program or
So
script instead?
we use a technology called LangChain. It's a pretty popular framework for using large language models to I call it orchestrate, but essentially orchestrate a series of work to complete some task. And what LangChain does is it breaks some requests down into the steps. And then what we've done is we've done a lot of work to make sure then that the large language model knows which skill to use to do what. And some of these skills are narrow task-based AI models, whereas some of them are very traditional services like SQL to a database. So that's really more in the programming
Mm.
that we do around the large language model. There is tuning, right? There's tuning in various aspects of this. Um, but yeah, it's the framework's called LangChain. People should check it out. There's a product called Auto GPT, which uses that technology. It's pretty fascinating what people are doing.
What about these concerns that AI is going to replace human accountants? Now that you've integrated this tool into the product, it's doing these little tasks for now, but we previously discussed last year this idea that the AI is going to become like a staff accountant in your team, right? Like,
Yep.
so if I'm a staff accountant working at an organization that uses Sage Intacct, do I need to be worried that Sage Copilot is going to become my coworker and then take my job?
Well, I guess I would start with nobody wants to do the stuff that AI is going to be good at. Doing all the data entry and spotting errors. But I go back to 1980. So 1980 was the first spreadsheet, VisiCalc. There were 339,000 accountants in the US, thereabouts. And if you think about the technology available to accountants at the time, it was a 10 key with a roll of white paper. And they would spend hours totaling up columns and then cross-referencing and making sure the T accounts work out and the trial balance is accurate. With VisiCalc, suddenly you could do that in a spreadsheet and you'd go from hours to seconds. And I think we're going to see something similar, when we really embrace this. And we're going to look back on things like doing data entry, where it's taking seconds now, and wonder how we were ever doing this manually. And the industry did what it does best, right? It sort of moved up the value chain in how it serves its clients and the businesses that they work for. And that's there's one other argument that I think is super important here, and that is the more we use technology to automate, the more we need human trust to sort of stand by the results of that automation. I sort of joke that we're never going to accept an audit report signed by an AI. And so the accounting industry and its ability to provide third-party assurance will only become more valuable in the future as we're depending more and more on technology.
Yeah, more automation, more tech involved in how the data gets into the system. You still got to have somebody who understands how that all works and can sign off on
Right.
it.
Because it's not going to directly replace an individual. It's going to replace 20% of an individual's annoying, crappy work, and somebody else's 20% of annoying, crappy work, and somebody else's 20%. And your org, that might add up to a full team member. But
Right. Yeah. So in accounts payable automation, what's happening is they're spending more time managing their vendor relationships.
Yeah. Actually
They're
following
spending,
up.
yeah, and actually something that
Yeah.
was kind of surprising to me. People want to pay their vendors faster.
Yeah.
Because they really rely
Mhm.
on having those good, healthy relationships in their supply chain.
Yeah.
And so, just achieving that outcome has been super valuable to people. And the biggest stories that we're hearing from customers are really that as they're growing, they're not having to add staff to processing invoices, right? They're adding staff to do more strategic things.
Aaron, thank you so much for your time today. We've been talking with Aaron Harris, CTO at Sage, all about Sage Copilot and the AI that is coming to Sage Intacct and other Sage products soon. Is this available to everyone now, or will it be available soon? What's the situation?
So we're making it first available to our Sage Accounting and Sage Accountants products in the UK market. We will spend some time making sure that we've got a good product there. And at some point, probably in 2025, we'll bring it to Intacct and other products, but I can't give you any specific dates yet.
All right, sounds good. Well, stay tuned. Aaron, great talking with you and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks for having me.